Good day, students. Today we're going to talk about household budgeting again. And basically, we're going to continue our look at this family and how they have done budgeting their household. Now, in our last tutorial, we looked at a financial analysis where we broke each household budgeting item down to a percentage of the income that the family was bringing in, and we broke it down by percents, and we compared that to the pie chart we had made. Today, I want to show you another way of looking and pinpointing areas where the family could do better by looking at the actual dollar figures for how they did on their household budgeting. Now, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks as well in Sheets. I'm going to show you 4 different things today, and they are very valuable in learning how to create spreadsheets and manipulate spreadsheets to work for you. And they're going to make you head and shoulders above your classmates. You are going to look brilliant after you know how to do these things. So you're going to have to trust me on that, okay? All right, so I've added 2 headings here, budget and actual, so that you can see which headings we're working with when I'm showing you how to do these things. Now, just a little review, household budgeting analysis. This is the income section of the spreadsheet, and then the expenses are broken down into 3 categories. We have the fixed costs here. Those are the costs that do not change. They're fixed, so you know what to budget and you know how much they're going to be. So pretty much these expenses turned out to be exactly what we budgeted them to be. Now, below that, you see the semi-variable expenses. Those are expenses that have a fixed element to them. For example, DirecTV, that has a basic charge for their service, but then they have a variable or changing aspect to their expense, because variable does mean change. So that if you got a lot of pay-per-view movies in a month or something like that, your expense would increase. Highly variable expenses are more controllable to the household, because they can change depending totally on how much you use them. For example, you can reduce the amount of times you go out to dinner, or you can reduce the amount of entertainment that you do, that kind of thing, and you can reduce those costs. So they are highly changing expenses, basically. Okay, so now let's get started. And again, I'm showing you another way to analyze how this family looks at how they spend their money. The first tip and trick I'm going to show you how to do is how to insert a column in spreadsheets. Now, you can do this with rows as well. So if you forget to put something in, or you need to add something, let's say on row 13, you can do that. You don't have to retype all of this stuff. So I'm going to show you how to do it with columns. You're going to click on the column next to where you want to insert. And you can either click on this down arrow and get the drop down menu, or you can actually right click as well. I clicked on the arrow, and I'm going to insert a column to the right. And this is where I'm going to put the new information that I want to look at. So I'm going to call this item analysis. Whoops, I need to capitalize that. Item analysis. Now, second trick. You can see, because of the font I've chosen, item analysis is much wider than this column. Now, there are 2 ways you can correct this. You can, well, actually, you could make the writing smaller, but that wouldn't look good with our other headings. So I could hover over the right-hand side of the column and wait for my cursor to change to a double-sided arrow, and then just pull it over. And that's one way I could do. Or, because I want my columns to remain the same width, I can go up here to my toolbar, and when you hover over your toolbar, each item tells you what it does. So I'm going to go way over here to this one that says text wrapping. Now, wrapping doesn't mean it's going to start singing to you when you click on it. It actually means it's going to wrap your text and kind of stack it up like financial analysis is so that it'll fit within the column. And when you click on that, you get 3 options. I'm going to choose the wrap option, and it's going to conveniently stack up that heading so that it looks nice. Okay, so now we can go to entering our formula. Now, if you'll remember from the last tutorial, you always start a formula with an equal sign. That tells the cell that you're in, and we're currently in F12. You're telling the spreadsheet you're going to have it do a mathematical calculation for you that is exactly like a calculator would do, okay? So you're going to click on the expense for that line item, which is $1,000. That's how much we actually spent. And actually, let me back up here. I'm doing the last formula. I apologize. We're going to click on the budgeted amount, and we're going to subtract the actual amount and hit enter. Now, this new way of analyzing our budget, we're going to take each budgeted line item and subtract what we actually spent to make sure we're in line. Now, like I mentioned before, fixed costs, you know how much they're going to be, and you know how much you're going to spend. So that balance should be 0 always, because unless your mortgage company increases your mortgage, it's going to be 0 because you know what to expect there. Now, in the last video, and I've only got one of these formulas in, and I want to remind you that when you have a formula in a cell, you have the formula bar up here that tells you the math that you asked the spreadsheet to do. When we were looking at percentages, we were making the cell equal to the expense divided by the income, which is $6,500, and it's in cell number E9. And I made that blue-green color so that it would stand out for you. Now, you entered 20 formulas all the way down this column, yes, in the last video. So today we need to do the same thing for this formula. And we need to enter that formula all the way down. But that brings me to the third tip and trick I'm going to show you. If the formula you're entering follows the same pattern for each row, you don't have to re-enter it every single time. There's a shortcut, and I'm about to show it to you, and it's actually something that you guys have stumbled upon, or several of you have, when you were trying to put your borders on. You accidentally grabbed this teeny weeny little blue box at the bottom of the cell and drug it through your spreadsheet to put borders on, and it messed up your spreadsheet and you were all freaked out. The purpose of this little blue box is not to mess you up. This purpose is to do what's called a fill down. That's FILLDOWN. And let me show you how it works. Because we want to take the value in the D column and subtract the value from the E column in every single one of these rows, we don't have to keep entering that. All we have to do is hover over this little teeny weeny blue box and pull it down to the end of the section, and it will fill down the formula for us. Now, let's check that because I want you to see how it works. We entered this first formula, and the answer is in the cell F12. The formula is up here in the formula bar. But since we did the fill down, if we click down this column, I want you to keep your eye on the formula bar, because obviously this column minus this value, the value in this column minus the value in this column equals 0 for all of these because they are our fixed costs. But let's check the formula. As I click down, keep your eye on the formula bar and notice how it changes the row number for each one of these cells so that it correctly calculates how much we spent. Isn't that amazing? It is. Okay, so let's move down to the next section. This one's not so clean because we've over and underspent on a lot of these. So I'm going to copy my formula from the section above, which is a Control C. And then I'm going to click on the first cell in my item analysis here. And again, we are analyzing the dollar figures here. So I'm going to Control V here, and it's going to go ahead and adapt the row number for me because, again, we're following the same pattern in our math. We want to take whatever's in this box and subtract whatever's in this box to get the result in this box. So now I'm going to fill down for this section. I'm going to hover over my little tiny blue square, and I'm going to pull it down. And there you go. I'm going to, again, click through all of these cells, and I want you to keep your eye on the formula bar. See what it does? It updates the D and the E cell for each row. How fantastic is that? Oops, I need to go down 2 more. I'm going to do that. We just didn't have any other expenses this particular month. Okay, now let's do the last section, which is our highly variable. I'm going to copy this formula, paste it. Actually, I didn't have to copy it because it was still in there because we haven't changed what we copied. But now we're going to utilize our little blue square. You hover over it till your cursor becomes a plus sign and fill it down. Okay, so now when we go to analyze our budget, you're going to want to, your eye should be drawn to anything that's a negative. If you overspent, it's going to be a negative. And that's going to be an item where you need to do one of 2 things. You either need to spend less in that category in the following month, or you need to take some of the money from one of the other items and add it to that one if you see you're actually going to need to increase your budget for that expense in the following months. Okay? So now I want to show you something because a question may have occurred to you. Why in the world, Miss Cowart, did you make me put 20 formulas in this column when I could have used the fill down and only done it 1 time? And I'm about to answer that question for you. The reason is because this cell that we used for the total income for this family is always in E9, and the spreadsheet doesn't have a way of recognizing that change in the pattern, because as we move down the expense, the actual column, the first one, basically what you were telling it to do is to divide E12 by the cell that was 3 cells up. And so it would constantly, as we move down, well, I'll just do it and show you. Okay, keep your eye on the formula bar. As I move down, it follows the pattern of the formula. In other words, it divides the current expense by the cell that is 3 cells up. And that would move down the spreadsheet and not be accurate because we want it to stay divided by E9 always. So that gave us incorrect values here, okay? Now, the final tip and trick I want to show you is how to name a cell, because that's a get around for this, and that's what I'll be covering in my next tutorial. Go ahead and make your spreadsheet look like this one, and then I'm going to show you a shortcut for how to only enter this formula one time and use the fill down to make it work. I hope this helped you out. Doesn't that make you feel so much more intelligent to know how to work a spreadsheet? I hope so. Have a good day, guys.